Okay, welcome back. I've said that so many times at the beginning of all my videos, and this is the first time I've done it without a game. As you can see, we're not playing any games this time. This is also the first face reveal. Even the videos I've done where I set world record high scores on old black box NES games, and I have to show off the cartridge at the beginning. I've never shown my face, but for this occasion, after two or 300 videos or whatever it is, I've decided, yeah, I'll go ahead and show my face because I wanted to talk honestly about what's going on, and I'm sure you can guess by the title what's going on. My marriage of 16 years is pretty much officially over. Just waiting for a few things to happen before we sign the papers and file them. So back in late spring, end of winter, early spring, I probably talked about videos that I wanted to make going forward. I wanted to do I wanted to play the NWC cart, not the actual cart, but a retro USB copy, which has been going up in price. I was able to get my hands on, and I wanted to do that on the channel. Also wanted to do set a world record high score for Super Mario World on the SNES Mini. The AVGN Adventures is coming out with a physical copy. It still hasn't come in yet, but when it came out when the physical copy from L Limited Run Games finally came out, I wanted to play that on the channel on the Kevtris and show it off. And also wanted to do Limited Run Games also doing a physical copy of the X-Men arcade game, which I was super excited about. Again, still hasn't come in yet. Not sure what's going on with Limited Run Games, but those were videos I wanted to make throughout the summer and early fall. And then I made a post probably around Memorial Day weekend that I wouldn't be doing any videos over the summer. Now you know why. Let me first apologize if the lighting is kind of weird. I'm down here on an island in the coastal southeast, and when it's not absolutely picturesque and beautiful back here, it is stormy this time of year, and we have a storm that's rolling through. So if you hear thunder, just roll with it, I guess. Yes, I will be getting divorced. What happened was, so I'll give you the short version because the long version, too many details to get lost in. I'll give you a few details here and there just so you can kind of understand where I'm coming from and what happened, and get some things off my chest that I felt that this would be cathartic to do. Excuse me. So, back in mid-May, I had a night where I couldn't sleep. Those of you that pay attention, know me, know that I pride myself on getting up early, going to the gym, doing a nice 5-10 mile run, whatever, showering at the gym, getting ready for my job at the bank, and then if there's time, on the weekends or whatever, recording a video. And there was one night finally where I'd felt my wife kind of putting more distance between us over the last couple years, and it was the Monday right before Memorial Day weekend, and I couldn't sleep. Normally I'm in bed and asleep by 10 o'clock at night, 9:30, 10 at the latest, and it was 10:30 and I just couldn't sleep, because we'd had this I'd asked her several times over the last couple years, is everything okay with us? What do you need me to do better? What can I do to help? And she would always tell me, oh, nothing, you're perfect, everything's fine. And it made me feel like, man, I must just be really insecure about things. She says everything's perfect, but to me, I feel like I'm losing her. And so this Monday night, I got out of bed, I put on some clothes, I came downstairs, and I said, "Hey, can we talk?" And I think she finally sensed maybe that it was time to come clean after a couple years of gaslighting me. She said, "Let's do it tomorrow." And I almost relented. I almost said, "Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can talk tomorrow." But then I thought, there's no, if we have to have a heavy conversation tomorrow, A, there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. And B, I'm going to be worthless at work tomorrow. I'm going to have this added stress hanging over me. I'm going to be tired. Um, it's not going to be a good day for me tomorrow. So I said, no, let's go ahead and have it tonight. So we got in the car. We drove to shut down Mini Mart a couple blocks from us. And I asked her, I was like, what's going on? Why do I feel like you keep putting more distance between us? I'm trying so hard to, give you everything you need and, be good for you and the kids. And she finally admitted that she wanted out of the marriage, that she was thinking of leaving me, that she'd been thinking of leaving me for some time. And it really hurt. It crushed me. I was not prepared for that answer. So I said, okay. And I went home. She told me that she would go stay, at a friend's house or something. And I said, no, that's fine. I'm going to pack up some stuff and I'm going to leave. So I packed up some things that I needed. I stayed at a cheap motel a couple towns over. Spent the next couple days getting my affairs in order. Told my boss what was going on. She wrote me a glowing letter of recommendation, and I made the trip from my home in central Connecticut, where I'd been living for the last 20 years, and drove down to this small island coastal beachside condo. I've been living here for the last 3 months. This used to be a rental property my parents bought back in the early 2000s. And, they would rent it out over the year. And then during the summer, we'd come down here, meet up for like a nice long vacation or a trip or whatever. And a couple years ago, my mom took it off the market. And, I told my mom, hey, I'm going to go to the island. I'm going to go to the condo and stay there while, figure things out. I got as far as New Jersey before I got a phone call from my mother-in-law, who said that my wife had had a meltdown at work and, was stopped for the night in Virginia and called her. And the agreement was, okay, we'll take the summer. She needed space, whatever that means. She said she needed the summer off to get herself in a good emotional space. I said, okay. The plan was in August, she would fly down here. We'd spend a couple days down here, and then we'd drive back up together to Connecticut. I'd go back to my old job. We'd, work on marriage counseling and reconciliation. So the first, and I would, she would call me 2 scheduled 1-hour phone calls per week, spaced out 3 or 4 days apart. And for the first, throughout May and June, we kept it light. But when June turned into July, it became time to have the more serious talks. Well, okay, what's it going to look like when I go back? What do I need to do going forward? How are you going to change? How am I going to change? What changes do we have to make? So mid-July, we agreed to write down a list of changes that we needed from one another, and I emailed her mine, and it was simple stuff. I need you to be honest with me. I need you to communicate with me. I need you to prioritize our marriage, because I felt like she hadn't been prioritizing our marriage. She'd been engaging in self-destructive behaviors and hanging out with people who had engaged in self-destructive behaviors. And I waited for, I thought it was a reasonable list of expectations, and I waited for her list. and her list did not come till several days later. She sent me an email, which was not a list. Instead, it was the it was kind of vague. The couple big takeaways I got from it were she had grown to resent the institution of marriage after 16 years, and she got tired of working hard, being a good mom, being a doting wife, and it crushed me. There's She basically told me that she wants out of our marriage, and that there's nothing I can do to. As hard as I wanted to fight for it, me personally, as hard as I wanted to fight for it, she doesn't want to be in it anymore. And after 16 years, that's so painful. That's such a tough new reality. So we agreed, or rather, I agreed to it because I didn't want this. The technical legal term is a dissolution. Uh, she will be, we've already split the finances. She's selling the house that we bought back in 2016 and raised our kids in. And once the house, I kept my car, of course. Once the house sells, then I will give her the dissolution, and we will no longer be married. And it's not at all what I wanted. It hurts. It hurts so much. But there is nothing else for it. If you've, pay attention to the channel, you probably know a lot of what I'm about to say. But we got married, when I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy submarine force in Connecticut. My boat was in Connecticut. And her stepfather was a commander on the base. I was 25, she was 22. We met, we fell in love. 6 months later, we got married. We had a daughter together. And I loved her so fiercely. She was having her in my life was the single when she was my wife. She was the single. Her and my daughter and my family. It was just the single greatest joy. And knowing that it's gone is so painful. It's taken me the better part of 3 months to get over it. This channel started during the pandemic. I'm sure you all recall that. I got furloughed from my job in sales early spring of 2020, late winter or early spring of 2020. We had the house, the finances were secure, and she approached me. She was in business administration at the time, and she told me that she wanted to go for her master's degree into a science field, a blend of science and medicine. I won't get too much into it. I don't want to give away too many details. And I agreed. I said, okay, I support you. Here's what, the kids were in, I think, junior high at the time. So I got the kids together and I said, okay, mom is still going to be working. She's also going to be doing a rigorous grad school program. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a part-time job as a cashier at a supermarket, and I'm going to pick up the slack around the house. I'll be taking care of you kids. I'll be doing the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning, while mom, does, works and goes to school. And so we did that for 3 years, and in, I think, late 2023 or early 2024, she finally finished her program, and I supported her. I was very proud of her. And then I was like, okay, now it's my turn, so I went into banking and finance. And we were making great money, and our kids were just about grown. My stepson just graduated high school. My daughter's about to be a junior. So we were finally at that point where we could start traveling and taking trips together. The kids' college funds are paid for. We had the house, we had cars. We were at the point where we could finally start doing the stuff together that we'd always wanted to do. And it was so painful to learn that when we get there, when we get to that point, she doesn't want to do any of that stuff with me. She has a different vision of what her future looks like, and it doesn't include me. I'm 42. She's almost 40. She'll be 40 soon. And I feel really like betrayed by that she would do something that she would say and do something so cruel at this point. And like I said, she's been engaging in self-destructive behaviors and hanging out with people who are also engaging in self-destructive behaviors. I tried my very best to set a good example. You've heard me talk about it a million times. When the pandemic hit, I quit drinking, no drugs, no alcohol. I don't even consume caffeine anymore. I gave up caffeine a little while later. I dedicated, myself to being the best example I could for my family. I work hard. I train hard. Go to the gym, run hard. I ran my first marathon at 40 and ended up qualifying for 2 of the 6 world major marathons, Boston and Chicago. And I never get tired of bragging about that. On top of, top finishes and all kinds of 5Ks, 10Ks, 2-milers, 5-milers, 6Ks, 8Ks, half marathons, you name it, any distance. I'm aiming for a top spot. I lost all the weight. I was really heavy before the pandemic. I lost all that en route to getting in really great shape. And working hard. And even when I took my full-time job at the bank, I was still doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping, and taking care of the kids. So, all doing all the housework around the house. So, it's been really tough for me. I feel like when I got home, when I got here at the condo on the island, I because I'd Googled what percentage of separations end in proper reconciliation, and it was something like pitiful, like 15%. Most separations, unfortunately, end in divorce. The plan was for us to work on it, and as the time came, she just decided she didn't want to do it anymore. So, there was some bright spots. I did, when I got down here, it was either stay here, and even though it's nice here, I've got the beach, behind me. I run on the beach every morning at sunrise, and I walk the beach every night at sunset, and it's nice, and it does have a healing quality to it. And it's not a big population here. A lot of locals. I took a job when I thought reconciliation was the plan. I took a job at a local mini mart down here to kill some time, the busiest one here on the island, and I got to know a lot of the locals, and they were all very kind and supportive, and I've made some great friends down here. I've put down roots down here, so to speak. So I don't feel, I do feel that I've had like a good, they all know I talk to them a little bit here and there about what's going on. They all kind of, for the most part, understand and get it, and they're great people. They've really taken to me. I still miss you all, of course, and I am going to miss my friends in Connecticut. I might come back once to pick up my stuff, to pick up the stuff that I didn't bring with me when I left. And that's really about it. And, the hard thing about divorce, everyone goes through it differently. Everyone experiences it differently based on the circumstances that led to it. And mine were I'm not trying to say I was perfect. I was trying to be as good as I could possibly be to set a good example for my kids. And I feel that she was not doing that, and that she sabotaged the marriage. It's straight out of Eat, Pray, Love. She just decided that the grass would be greener on the other side, and she did it in a very cruel way, for which I don't believe I'll ever forgive her for. To me, the cruelty is, you know, gaslighting me and breaking my heart, and you know, putting me in a position where I don't have my daughter with me. And I don't know what everybody else's experience is with divorce, but with mine, so far, the way I've kind of squared the circle is that, I loved this woman fiercely. She was the love of my life. She was the single greatest. She was so kind and smart and fun. And in the 16 years that we were married, I think about all those memories of being with her, of our achievements together, going through the tough financial times together, and then celebrating when our finances were secure. I think of raising our kids together and all those great memories. We didn't get a proper honeymoon because I was in the Navy, so it was like 4 years later where we did finally get a proper honeymoon, and we went to Costa Rica together and just had a beautiful time together. We took cruises with the kids. We took trips with the kids. Uh, so many great memories together, and they're all just ruined. Totally, with my experience with divorce is that it just totally ruins the memories that you have, because this this woman that I loved, that was the love of my life, ended up becoming someone who was very hurtful and cruel to me, and who I can never forgive. I would never put her in a position where she didn't have access to her kids, or I would never do anything to hurt her or break her heart. And I feel like she just completely threw me away like I was garbage. And I'm not even sure what. And for the longest time, it used to kind of bother me and keep me up at night. Why did this have to happen? Why did she do this? But now I'm at the point where it doesn't matter. It's over, and that's the bottom line. And I've moved on. I really don't care anymore. I have great friends down here who've been wonderful to me. My immediate family is a lot closer to me. Um, I do miss my daughter. If some of you maybe have heard her, like I know she did some commentary on my Doom 3 videos. I miss her so terribly much. Since I've been down here, I've only seen her once for one day, and the custody agreement is something that we agreed to. I won't see her for a couple more months, and that hurts. That's a cruelty that I never would have, inflicted on my soon-to-be ex-wife. And I think about my most beautiful memory with my soon-to-be ex-wife, and that was uh, maybe a year after only been married a year and a half or so, not even 2 years, and um, obviously living in Connecticut, kids very young, and I got a phone call, or I called. I used to call my dad, once or twice a week on the weekends, just to chat with him and catch up with him and see how he was. And one day, I called him, and my mom picked up the phone and said, "I'm taking your dad to the hospital. Something's not right with him." So he fell terminally ill, and he it was his wish to pass away at home. So he went to his home in Georgia, where my mom took care of him. My mom being a veteran nurse, and my wife and kids and I flew down, and my dad just wanted to spend some time with me and the kids before he passed away. So we flew down, and I was in my room. I was in my father's room, and just playing cards with him, TV on in the background, just chatting with him about whatever it is he wanted to talk about. Great times we had together. What life was like for me now, and spent the week there with him. And then it came time to go home. Had to catch the plane, bring my wife and kids back home. And as I left his room and walked down the stairs, it dawned on me that this was the last time I was ever going to see my father. The reality had finally sunk in. I kicked the can on that all week, just enjoying being with him. But after I walked down those stairs, it occurred, it finally set in. I will never see my father again. So my wife was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs, and she held me while I grieved right there. And we'd only been married like a year and a half at that point, and she just held me. And I remember, as sad as I was about losing my father and never seeing him again, it was also like the most beautiful form of love I'd ever had. That this beautiful young woman that I was head over heels in love with and married to was holding me, and I was at my most vulnerable, and she was there, and she was comforting, and it was the greatest hug I'd ever received in my life. And now all those memories, all those great conversations, the trips, the late honeymoon, that beautiful expression of love, it's all ruined. It's all been thrown away. Now I can't think about those without becoming angry and resentful and thinking about what a cruel, terrible person. I can't separate who she was from who she is now, who she became, and what she did to me. If I try to think about that beautiful expression of love, all I think about is she's the cruelest person I've ever known, who would break my heart like that and take my kids away. And I don't mean to end this on a bummer note. I really don't. But I did want to say just a couple more things. If you are single, I do hope you get married someday. I loved being married. I loved being in love with having this other person that I was in love with that I could count on and depend on. And it's the most heartbreaking thing when it ends. But when marriage works, if you are married, I pray that your marriage is beautiful and that it works. If you're single, I pray you get married and that it works, because it's so wonderful when it does. But whether you're single or married, I pray you never have to go through a divorce. It's so painful. It's taken me 3 months to get to this spot, but I do have a new job coming up at a new bank. I start soon. I'm very excited about that, to get back into banking. My finances are secure. I'm here at a beautiful beach house in Tybee Island. I miss you guys. I will come back to making videos again soon. I just wanted to give you an update on what was going on. And one more thing, I do believe that the good you put into this world comes back to you. And contrary-wise, I think the cruelty that you put in this world comes back to you. So I'm going to keep putting as much good into this world as I can. And I believe that the cruelty that she put in this world will come back to her. So, I believe in a fair and just God, and that's just the way the world works. So do me a favor. Don't be cruel. Keep putting good into the world. I miss you all, and I love you all, and I will be back. Please be patient. All right, so I will see you again soon.